She had perfected the art of being everyone's everything, until the day she completely fell apart in front of the people who mattered most. Lisa thought she had everything figured out. At 35, she was the kind of person everyone admired from the outside. Her house always looked perfect, with fresh flowers on the kitchen table and not a single dish in the sink. Her 2 kids always had clean clothes and finished homework. Her husband came home to dinner ready on time every night. But inside, Lisa felt empty. Every morning started the same way. The alarm went off at 5:30. She made coffee, packed lunchboxes, and got everyone ready for their day. She smiled at her neighbors when she took out the trash. She waved at other parents during school drop-off. She laughed at her coworkers' jokes during meetings, yet none of it felt real anymore. Lisa worked at a marketing company downtown. She wore nice clothes and carried a leather briefcase. Her desk was organized with color-coded folders. She never missed deadlines and always stayed late when projects needed extra work. Her boss praised her reliability. Her team counted on her to fix problems. Everyone saw her as the woman who had it all together, but Lisa felt like she was acting in a play where she forgot her real lines. The feeling started small, like a tiny crack in a perfect wall. At first she ignored it. She told herself she was just tired or stressed about work. Maybe she needed a vacation or a new hobby. She bought expensive face cream and tried yoga classes. She read self-help books and listened to motivational podcasts during her commute. Nothing helped. The crack kept growing bigger. Lisa began to notice how often she said yes when she wanted to say no. Her neighbor asked her to watch their dog for the weekend. She agreed even though her family had plans. Her mother-in-law wanted help planning a family reunion. Lisa spent her Saturday making phone calls and booking hotels. Her daughter's teacher needed volunteers for the school fundraiser. Lisa signed up for 3 different committees. Each yes made her feel more trapped. She started having strange moments where she felt disconnected from her own life. During important meetings, she would look around the conference room and wonder what she was doing there. At her son's baseball games, she clapped and cheered, but felt like she was watching someone else's life. During dinner conversations, she heard herself talking but couldn't remember what she had said minutes later. Her husband noticed something was different. He asked if everything was okay. Lisa gave him her usual bright smile and said she was fine. Just busy with work, she told him. Just tired from managing everything. He seemed satisfied with her answer and went back to watching television. But Lisa knew she was lying. She wasn't fine. She wasn't even sure who she was anymore. The worst part was looking in mirrors. The woman staring back at her looked successful and put together. Her hair was always styled perfectly. Her makeup never smudged. Her clothes fit well and matched her accessories, but her eyes looked tired and empty, like someone had turned off a light behind them. Lisa began avoiding mirrors when she could. She brushed her teeth looking down at the sink. She changed clothes without checking how they looked. She stopped taking selfies or pictures with friends. The woman in the mirror felt like a stranger wearing her face. Her days became a series of automatic responses. Good morning. How are you? Fine, thanks. See you later. Have a great day. She moved through conversations without really listening. She attended meetings without truly participating. She cooked dinner without tasting the food. She tucked her kids into bed without feeling the love she knew was there somewhere inside her. At night, when everyone else was sleeping, Lisa would sit in her kitchen and stare out the window. She tried to remember the last time she felt genuinely happy or excited about something. She couldn't recall a single moment from recent months where she felt truly alive and present. She thought about the woman she used to be before marriage and children and career responsibilities took over. That woman laughed easily and spoke her mind. She took long walks just because she enjoyed being outside. She stayed up late reading books that interested her. She had opinions about things and wasn't afraid to share them. Where did that woman go? When did Lisa stop being herself and start being what everyone else needed her to be? The questions kept her awake at night. She would lie next to her sleeping husband and wonder if this was all there was to life. Working, cleaning, cooking, managing everyone else's needs, while her own dreams got smaller and smaller, until they disappeared completely. Some nights she considered making changes. Maybe she could quit her job and try something new. Maybe she could tell her family she needed more help around the house. Maybe she could say no to some of the endless requests that filled her calendar. But then morning would come, and the routine would start again. Coffee, lunchboxes, smiles, waves, meetings, deadlines, dinner, bedtime stories. The same performance she had perfected over years of practice. The scary part was how good she had become at pretending everything was wonderful. Her friends envied her organized life. Her family relied on her constant availability. Her coworkers admired her dedication. Everyone around her benefited from her endless giving and people-pleasing. But Lisa was disappearing a little more each day, lost behind the mask of perfection she had created to keep everyone happy. She was drowning in her own success, suffocating under the weight of being everything to everyone except herself. The woman who had dreams and desires and her own voice was buried so deep under layers of expectations and obligations that Lisa wasn't sure she still existed at all. The day everything changed started like any other Tuesday. Lisa woke up at her usual time, made coffee, and prepared breakfast for her family. Her husband rushed out the door with his travel mug. Her kids grabbed their backpacks and lunchboxes. The house became quiet again, leaving Lisa alone with her thoughts and her perfectly organized schedule. She had an important presentation that day. For months, she had been working on a campaign for a new client. Late nights, weekend research, countless revisions. This presentation could change everything for her career. Her boss had made it clear that landing this account would mean a promotion and a significant raise. Lisa arrived at the office earlier than usual. She reviewed her notes one final time, checked her slides, and practiced her opening lines in the empty conference room. Everything was perfect. Her outfit was professional and polished. Her presentation materials were organized in a neat folder. She had backup copies of everything on her laptop and a USB drive. But as the morning progressed, something felt different. Her chest felt tight, like someone was slowly tightening a rope around her ribs. Her hands seemed shaky when she reached for her coffee cup. She told herself it was just nerves. Everyone gets nervous before big presentations. The conference room filled with executives, potential clients, and her colleagues. Lisa stood at the front of the room, looking out at expectant faces. She had done this hundreds of times before. Public speaking had never been a problem for her. She was known for being calm and confident during presentations. She clicked to her first slide and opened her mouth to speak. Nothing came out. The words she had practiced seemed to have vanished from her memory. She cleared her throat and tried again. Her voice sounded strange and distant, like it was coming from someone else. The room felt like it was spinning. The faces in front of her became blurry. Her heart started beating so fast she was sure everyone could hear it. Sweat began forming on her forehead despite the air conditioning. Her hands trembled as she reached for her water glass. She tried to continue with her presentation, but the words jumbled together. She lost her place in her notes. The slides on the screen didn't make sense anymore. She felt like she was drowning while everyone watched. The professional, competent woman she had always been was falling apart in front of the most important audience of her career. "I need a moment," she managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. She set down her notes and walked toward the door, feeling every pair of eyes following her. In the hallway, she leaned against the wall and tried to catch her breath. Her whole body was shaking now. Her boss followed her out, concern written across his face. "Are you okay? Do you need to call a doctor?" he asked. Lisa shook her head, unable to find words to explain what was happening to her. How could she tell him that she felt like she was disappearing from her own life? She went to the bathroom and splashed cold water on her face. The woman in the mirror looked terrified and fragile. This wasn't the composed professional she had cultivated for years. This was someone she didn't recognize, someone who couldn't handle the pressure anymore. Lisa returned to the conference room and apologized to everyone. She said she wasn't feeling well and asked to reschedule the presentation. The disappointed looks on people's faces made her stomach twist with shame. She had never failed at anything this publicly before. The rest of the day passed in a fog. Colleagues asked if she was okay. Her boss suggested she take the afternoon off. Lisa gathered her things and left the office, feeling like she was walking away from everything she had worked so hard to build. Instead of going home, she sat in her car in the parking lot for over an hour. She couldn't face walking through her front door and pretending everything was fine. How could she tell her family that she had fallen apart at work? How could she explain that the successful woman they depended on was cracking under pressure? She thought about calling her sister, the only person who might understand. They had grown up together, shared the same pressures to be perfect daughters. But her sister had chosen a different path. She lived in a small coastal town, running an art studio and teaching creativity workshops. Lisa had always thought her sister was wasting her talents, choosing an easy life over real success. Now she wondered if her sister had been the smart one all along. When Lisa finally drove home, her family was already eating dinner. Her husband had ordered pizza and helped the kids with their homework. They looked up when she walked in and she saw concern in their eyes. She realized she must look as terrible as she felt. "Rough day at work?" her husband asked gently. Lisa nodded, not trusting herself to speak without crying. Her daughter got up and hugged her, and that small gesture of love broke something inside her chest. That night, after everyone was asleep, Lisa sat in her kitchen with her phone in her hands. She scrolled through her contacts until she found her sister's number. They hadn't talked in months, maybe longer. Their lives had grown so different that they rarely had anything to say to each other anymore. But tonight was different. Tonight, Lisa needed to talk to someone who had known her before she became this perfect version of herself. Someone who might remember who she used to be underneath all the expectations and responsibilities. She pressed call before she could change her mind. Her sister answered on the third ring, sounding sleepy and surprised. "Lisa, is everything okay? It's almost midnight." "I don't think I'm okay," Lisa whispered into the phone, surprised by her own honesty. "I had a panic attack at work today. I couldn't finish my presentation. I just fell apart in front of everyone." There was silence on the other end of the line. Then her sister's voice became soft and caring. "Tell me what happened," she said. So Lisa did. She told her about feeling empty for months, about going through the motions of her perfect life, about the moment when everything crashed down in that conference room. "Come visit me," her sister said when Lisa finished talking. "I'm running a workshop next weekend about finding your authentic self through creative expression. It might help you figure things out." Lisa almost laughed. A creative workshop? She couldn't even draw stick figures properly. "I don't think that's for me. I'm not the artistic type." "This isn't about being artistic," her sister explained. "It's about remembering who you are underneath all the roles you play. Just think about it, okay?" Lisa spent the next few days thinking about nothing else. At work, she struggled to concentrate. Her boss had been understanding about the presentation incident, but she knew people were talking. Some colleagues seemed concerned. Others appeared to be already positioning themselves for opportunities that might open up if she couldn't handle the pressure anymore. Her family tried to be supportive, but they didn't really understand what was happening to her. Her husband suggested she see a doctor or maybe take a vacation. Her kids were confused by her sudden mood changes and tried extra hard to be good, which only made Lisa feel worse about burdening them with her problems. Finally, she called her sister back and said she would come for the weekend. She told her family she needed some time to think and recharge. They seemed relieved that she was taking action to feel better, even if they didn't understand what kind of workshop she was attending. The drive to the coastal town took 3 hours. With each mile away from her usual life, Lisa felt something loosening in her chest. The landscape changed from suburban neighborhoods to rolling hills to glimpses of ocean. She rolled down the windows and let the salt air fill her car. Her sister's studio was nothing like Lisa's organized world. It was housed in an old converted warehouse with high ceilings and large windows facing the ocean. Paint covered the walls in wild splashes of color. Canvases leaned against every available surface. Tables held brushes, clay, fabric scraps, and art supplies Lisa couldn't even identify. The other workshop participants were already there when Lisa arrived. She felt completely out of place in her neat jeans and button-down shirt. The group included a retired teacher wearing paint-covered overalls, a young man with tattoos covering his arms, an older woman in flowing scarves, and several others who looked like they belonged in this creative space. "Welcome," her sister said, hugging her tightly. "I'm so glad you came." The first exercise was simple but terrifying for Lisa. They were asked to introduce themselves without mentioning their job, their family roles, or any achievements, just their name and one thing that brought them joy. Lisa panicked. She realized she had no idea what brought her joy anymore. When it was her turn, she said, "I'm Lisa, and I used to love reading books that made me think about life differently." It was the first honest thing she had said about herself in years. The workshop leader, a gentle woman with kind eyes, guided them through various activities designed to help people reconnect with their authentic selves. They did movement exercises, where they were encouraged to move their bodies however felt natural. Lisa stood frozen at first, watching others stretch and sway and dance. She felt ridiculous trying to move without a specific goal or correct way to do it. "There's no wrong way," the leader reminded everyone. "Just listen to what your body wants to do." Slowly, Lisa began to move. Just small movements at first, shifting her weight from one foot to the other. Then bigger movements, rolling her shoulders, stretching her arms above her head. For the first time in months, she felt present in her own body instead of just carrying it around like luggage. They did writing exercises where they explored their fears and dreams without editing themselves. Lisa found herself writing about feeling trapped in a life that looked perfect, but felt empty. She wrote about missing the woman she used to be, the one who had opinions and took risks and laughed easily. The most challenging exercise came on the second day. They were asked to identify the masks they wore in their daily lives and think about what they were hiding underneath. Lisa made a list that filled 2 pages. The perfect employee, the devoted mother, the supportive wife, the reliable friend, the successful woman who had everything under control. "What would happen if you took off these masks?" the leader asked gently. Lisa felt tears start to form in her eyes. "People would see that I'm not as strong as they think I am. They would see that I'm scared and lost and don't have all the answers. They might not need me anymore if I'm not perfect." "And what would you gain if you stopped wearing these masks?" the leader continued. Lisa thought about it for a long time. "Maybe I would feel like myself again. Maybe I could have real relationships with people instead of just performing for them. Maybe I could figure out what I actually want instead of just doing what everyone expects." That evening, the group sat around a fire pit on the beach, sharing stories and insights from the day. Lisa listened to others talk about their journeys toward authenticity. The retired teacher spoke about rediscovering her love of painting after decades of focusing only on her students' needs. The young man with tattoos talked about learning to express his emotions instead of hiding behind anger and sarcasm. As the fire crackled and the waves crashed nearby, Lisa felt something she hadn't experienced in years, a sense of belonging. Not because she was performing a role perfectly, but because she was being accepted as her imperfect, struggling, genuine self. "I feel like I've been living someone else's life," she said when it was her turn to share. "I've been so focused on being what everyone needed that I forgot to be me. I don't even know who me is anymore." Her sister reached over and squeezed her hand. "You're still in there," she said softly. "You just need to give yourself permission to come back out." On the final night of the workshop, Lisa couldn't sleep. She lay in the small guest room above her sister's studio, listening to the ocean waves crash against the shore. The sound was both peaceful and restless, like her own heart. The weekend had changed something inside her. Through all the exercises and conversations, she had started to remember pieces of herself that had been buried for years. But knowing she had to return home tomorrow filled her with anxiety. How could she go back to her old life when she felt so different inside? Around midnight, she gave up trying to sleep and quietly made her way downstairs to the studio. Moonlight streamed through the large windows, casting everything in a silver glow. The art supplies and unfinished paintings looked magical in the soft light. Lisa walked slowly around the space, looking at the work created by workshop participants over the weekend. Each piece told a story of someone's journey toward authenticity. Some were bold and colorful, others quiet and subtle. All of them felt honest in a way that touched her heart. She stopped in front of a large mirror that her sister used for movement exercises. In the moonlight, she saw herself differently than she had in years. Not the polished professional or the perfect wife and mother, but just a woman standing in a moment of complete quiet. For the first time in so long, Lisa felt truly present. No mental lists of things to do tomorrow. No worry about what others might think of her. No performance to maintain, just her in this moment, feeling the cool air from the open windows and hearing the rhythmic sound of waves. She thought about all the layers she had built up over the years, the careful clothes that projected success, the practiced smile that made everyone comfortable, the automatic responses that kept conversations safe and superficial, the constant vigilance to make sure she never showed weakness or need. Standing there in the moonlight, Lisa realized how exhausting it had been to maintain all those layers, how much energy she had spent trying to be perfect instead of just being real, how lonely it felt to have people love an image of her rather than her actual self. The workshop leader had talked about transformation requiring courage, not the kind of courage needed to give presentations or manage difficult situations at work, but the courage to be vulnerable, the courage to let people see who you really are, including the parts that aren't polished or perfect. Lisa looked at her reflection and made a decision. She was tired of hiding behind all the protective layers. She was tired of feeling disconnected from her own life. She was ready to stop performing and start living. She began to remove the barriers she had built around herself, both literal and symbolic. Her professional blazer, carefully chosen to project authority. Her perfectly styled hair arranged to look effortlessly put together. Her makeup applied to present the best possible version of herself to the world. With each layer removed, Lisa felt lighter, more real, more like the person she remembered being before she learned to worry so much about everyone else's expectations. She stood barefoot on the cool wooden floor of the studio, feeling more authentic than she had in years. In the mirror, she saw not a perfect image, but a real woman with hopes and fears and dreams. A woman who had been hiding for too long behind masks of competence and control. For the first time in longer than she could remember, Lisa smiled at her reflection without calculating how it looked or what effect it might have on others. It was a smile of recognition, of finally meeting herself again after years of living as a stranger in her own life. The moment felt sacred, like a quiet ceremony marking the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. She wasn't becoming someone new, but rather returning to someone she had always been underneath all the expectations and obligations. Lisa spent several more minutes in front of the mirror, simply being present with herself. No judgment, no analysis, no planning for what came next. Just acceptance of who she was in this moment, imperfect and real and enough exactly as she was. When she finally returned to bed, she felt different. Not completely transformed, but fundamentally shifted. She had touched something authentic inside herself, something that had been waiting patiently for her to remember it existed. The next morning, as she prepared to leave the retreat, Lisa felt both nervous and excited about returning to her regular life. She knew the real work was just beginning. Living authentically wouldn't be as simple as having a breakthrough moment in a moonlit studio. It would require daily choices to be real instead of perfect, to be vulnerable instead of invulnerable. But something had definitely changed. She had remembered who she was underneath all the roles and responsibilities. She had felt what it was like to be truly present in her own life, instead of just going through the motions. She had experienced the relief of dropping the exhausting performance and simply being herself. Her sister hugged her goodbye and whispered, "Remember this feeling. Remember who you really are underneath everything else. You can carry this with you wherever you go." Lisa nodded, tears forming in her eyes. She knew the journey ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in years, she felt ready to live as her authentic self instead of the perfect image she had created. The drive home felt different. Lisa kept the windows down, letting the ocean breeze stay with her as long as possible. She wasn't rushing back to her responsibilities for the first time in years. Instead, she took the scenic route, stopping at a small cafe for coffee and actually sitting down to drink it instead of grabbing it to go. Walking into her house that Sunday evening, Lisa saw her familiar surroundings with new eyes. Everything was exactly as she had left it, perfectly organized and pristine. But now the perfection felt less important than it used to. Her family greeted her with warm hugs and questions about her weekend. Did the workshop help? Her husband asked, studying her face with concern. Yes, Lisa said simply. I remembered some things about myself that I had forgotten. Her daughter looked up from her homework. You look different, Mom. Relaxed or something? Lisa smiled, and this time it felt completely natural. I feel more like myself, she said. The real test came Monday morning. Lisa stood in front of her closet, looking at the rows of professional clothes that had been her armor for so many years. She chose an outfit that felt comfortable rather than one that projected a specific image. She styled her hair simply instead of perfectly. She put on less makeup than usual. At work, a few people commented that she looked refreshed. Her boss asked if she was ready to reschedule the presentation that had gone so badly the week before. Lisa took a deep breath and said yes, but she also asked if she could approach it differently this time. Instead of a formal presentation with perfect slides, Lisa spoke from her heart about the project. She shared her genuine enthusiasm for the creative possibilities instead of focusing only on profit projections. She admitted when she didn't know something instead of pretending to have all the answers. The response was better than she could have imagined. The clients connected with her authenticity and passion. Her colleagues seemed more engaged with her honest approach than they ever had with her polished performances. The presentation was successful, but more importantly, Lisa felt good about how she had shown up as herself. The changes at home took more time. Her family had grown accustomed to Lisa managing everything perfectly. When she started asking for help with household tasks, they were initially confused. When she began expressing her own needs and preferences instead of always deferring to others, there were some awkward adjustments. Her husband had the hardest time adapting. He had fallen in love with confident, capable Lisa who seemed to have everything under control. This newer version, who admitted struggles and asked for support, challenged their established dynamic. I feel like I don't know how to help you, he confessed one evening after Lisa had expressed frustration about feeling overwhelmed. You don't need to fix anything, Lisa replied. Just listen to me. See me as a real person with real feelings, instead of someone who's supposed to handle everything perfectly. Their conversations became deeper and more honest. Lisa stopped pretending to be fine when she wasn't. She started sharing her thoughts and dreams instead of just focusing on practical matters. Slowly, their relationship began to feel more like a real partnership. Her children adjusted more easily. Kids are naturally drawn to authenticity, and they responded well to having a mother who was more present and genuine. Lisa stopped hovering over their every activity and gave them space to make their own mistakes and discoveries. She shared more about her own experiences and feelings, which helped them feel comfortable doing the same. At work, Lisa's new approach created ripple effects throughout her team. She started leading meetings differently, encouraging honest feedback, instead of just seeking agreement. She admitted her own mistakes and talked openly about learning from failures. Other employees began to feel safer being authentic too. Some colleagues struggled with the change. They had benefited from Lisa's people-pleasing tendencies and didn't appreciate her newfound boundaries. When she stopped volunteering for every extra project or staying late to fix other people's problems, there were some uncomfortable conversations. But Lisa discovered that being authentic attracted the right kinds of relationships, while naturally filtering out the ones that were based only on what she could provide for others. She developed deeper friendships with people who appreciated her genuine self, rather than her perfect image. The biggest change was in how Lisa spent her time alone. She started reading books again, choosing stories that interested her rather than ones that might be impressive to discuss. She took long walks without any destination, just enjoying the movement and fresh air. She began keeping a journal, writing down her real thoughts and feelings without worrying about whether they were appropriate or admirable. 6 months after the workshop, Lisa looked back on her transformation with amazement. She wasn't living a completely different life, but she was living her same life as a completely different person. The external changes were subtle, but the internal shift was profound. She still worked hard and cared for her family, but she did so from a place of choice rather than obligation. She still maintained her home and met her responsibilities, but she no longer sacrificed her own well-being for the appearance of perfection. Most importantly, Lisa felt alive in her own life instead of just going through the motions. She experienced genuine joy in small moments. She felt real connection with the people she loved. She had opinions and expressed them. She made mistakes and learned from them without shame. The woman who had once felt trapped in a perfect but empty life had discovered the courage to be imperfect and real. She had learned that vulnerability wasn't weakness but strength. That authenticity wasn't selfish but necessary. Standing in her kitchen one morning, making coffee in the same routine she had followed for years, Lisa caught her reflection in the window and smiled. Not the practiced smile of performance, but the natural smile of someone who genuinely liked the person she saw looking back at her. She had found her way back to herself, and she intended to never lose herself again.